So we're gonna.
Welcome to the Holistic Kid Show. My name is Zane.
My name's Abdullah.
And my name is Imal.
We're the Holistic Kids who try to promote us kids from the inside out. Did you know International Podcast Day is coming up?
Really?
Yeah, I didn't even know it was a thing.
Yes, and to celebrate, we have a very special guest today to talk nutrition's hottest topic. To gluten or not to gluten? That is a question.
Gluten is a protein found in wheat, barley, rye, and so many other foods. We have heard that the trend, or we heard that now it's everywhere. And so many products now are labeled gluten free. But when we asked our pediatrician about it, they just told us it's just for celiac disease patients. But is that true?
What is celiac disease?
Well, celiac disease is an autoimmune disease that results from an immune reaction after eating gluten. But there's also something called non-celiac gluten sensitivity, or NCGS.
So should we be going gluten free?
Well, we have the perfect guest with us to talk about just that, Dr. Peter Osborne. Dr. Peter Osborne is the clinical director of Origins Healthcare in Sugar Land, Texas. He is a doctor of chiropractic, a doctor of functional medicine, and is also a doctor of pastoral science and a board certified clinical nutritionist. Oftentimes referred to as the Gluten Free Warrior, he is one of the most sought after functional medicine doctors in the country. His practice is centered on helping those with painful chronic degenerative and autoimmune diseases, with a primary focus on gluten sensitivities and food allergies. He is one of the world's leading authorities on gluten sensitivity, which is so cool, and lectures nationally to the public and medical professionals on numerous nutrition-related topics. He is also the founder of Gluten Free Society and the author of the Gluten Free Health Solution and Glutenology, a series of digital videos and ebooks designed to help educate the world about gluten sensitivity. In addition, he is the author of the bestseller No Grain,
No grain.
No Pain. Osborne has served as the executive director and the vice president for the American Clinical Board of Nutrition and is on the advisory board for Functional Medicine University. He has been featured on PBS, Fox News, CBS, Celiac.com, and even DrAx.com, the Gluten Summit, and the People's Pharmacy Radio, and many well-known and other publications. We are so incredibly honored for you to join us today. So, what is your story, anyways, bro?
That's a big question. I think, thanks for having me. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here.
It's our pleasure.
Yeah, my story goes back to the VA hospital. I actually was working as an intern in the VA hospital, in the part of the hospital that treats all the people with really severe arthritis. It's called rheumatology, the department. And one of the things that kept happening repetitively is people kept getting heavy doses of medication but not getting better. And that was frustrating for me because these people were veterans. They were soldiers and they had fought for our country and our freedoms. And here they were being put on these medicines and not getting better. And I wanted them to get better. And so when I started to question what was happening in the hospital, I was met with a lot of resistance. The doctors didn't want me questioning anything. They just wanted me to get in line and follow what everyone had already been doing. And so one of the questions that I asked, though, is, does gluten cause autoimmune disease? Because we know celiac disease, as you guys have mentioned earlier, is a form of autoimmune disease that is caused by gluten. And everyone knows that. All the scientists, all the doctors agree. But what about other forms of autoimmune disease? Because celiac affects the small intestine. And just like you also mentioned non-celiac gluten sensitivity, this is how gluten can affect other areas. It can affect your joints. Gluten can affect your muscles. Gluten can affect your soft tissue. And it can cause a lot of problems in people. And so I was asking the question in the VA hospital whether or not gluten could cause autoimmune arthritis. And so what I ended up finding was absolutely yes, it could. And that's kind of the beginning of the story. We could talk for hours about the actual story, but I want to keep this on point for your audience without distracting them too much.
Wow, that is amazing.
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 Let's start with the basics. What is gluten? Is it only a bread?
So gluten is a protein. It's actually more than one protein. It's a family of proteins, and it's found in lots of foods, not just bread. It is in bread. It's in bread, pasta, cereal, donuts, cookies, cakes, things like that. But gluten is also used as a filler. And so you can find gluten, for example, sometimes in products like ketchup. You can find gluten in lipstick, right? Sometimes they use gluten fillers. You can find gluten in medications that doctors prescribe. So gluten can be found because it's a protein that has a really sticky quality. It's what makes bread doughy and chewy. And so that it's used in other items to make those other items doughy and chewy as well. So you find gluten as a filler to make things more elastic and chewy. And that's where you have to be very careful if you're gluten sensitive, because it's put in so many things besides bread.
Yeah, and we're hearing a lot of people, even in my class, that are sensitive to gluten. Why are people so sensitive to gluten?
Well, gluten sensitivity is super common. It's actually about 7% of the world is gluten sensitive. Now, years ago, they used to think it was less than 1%. But with all the new research coming out, we now know it's closer to 7%. So it's a very large number of people that react to gluten. And what happens is these people have a unique genetic, they have a unique genetic allele, or a set of genetic alleles, which basically their genes, when they're exposed to gluten, create an inflammatory response or response to that gluten to try to neutralize it or to try to get rid of it. And in that process, it creates damage. So this is genetic. Gluten sensitivity is not a disease, as so many people think. It is a genetic predisposition. If you have the right genes, you will be gluten sensitive. And if you expose yourself to gluten, then it can make you sick by causing chronic inflammation.
So has this gene disorder, or basically has people been like with celiac, has this been going on for thousands of years, ever since people started eating grains?
Yeah, so the oldest record of celiac disease was 2000 years BC. So it goes back as far as we have really recorded history. So this has been going on as long as we know people have been eating grain. This is not new. Some people think it's new. Some people think that that nobody's really got gluten problems, that really it's pesticides, because a lot of our grains have pesticides in them as well, which can make people sick. But gluten is a very big problem, again, for about 7% of people.
So a lot of in schools, they tell us that these are the 5 main food groups: fruit, vegetables, protein, dairy, and gluten. And then these are the ones that are the most healthy, right? And why? Because obviously gluten can be really harmful for your body with or without celiac. And so why have this been taught? Has this been taught to kids, schools, and why is there so much promotion behind this gluten?
Because cereal companies are very wealthy, and they want kids eating their cereal, and they want to make more money off their cereal. That really is the easiest and shortest answer. If you ever look on the TV, I don't know if you guys ever watch TV, but look how many cartoon characters are used to convince kids they should eat cereal for breakfast, right? You got rabbits, and you got bears, and you got all kinds of other friendly looking characters. And the reality is this is nothing really more than marketing. Gluten, the whole push at school, you have to understand who wrote that food guide pyramid where you're talking about food groups.
Yeah.
Nutritionists did not write that. Politicians and lawyers did. And they wrote it in order to sell more grain. And one of the reasons why they want to sell more grain is because the government takes money from people's taxes to grow grain. And so it's very cheap food, and they can grow it very inexpensively at taxpayer expense and make all kinds of things with it. Bread, pasta, cereal again. And so they put it on the food guide pyramid, but the reality is it's not really all that healthy. Grains are problematic for more reasons than just gluten. There are other aspects of grains that we could talk about if you'd like, but grain in and of itself is largely marketing and promotional. And so it's found in school books, and most people, unfortunately, aren't aware of that. And so they miss the boat on that. But cereal has only been around since 1897. So, a lot of people think cereal's been around forever, right? Cereal's only been around. It was invented in 1897. Kellogg's Corn Flakes was the first cereal, and Post, if you know the company Post that makes cereal, grape nuts. So Corn Flakes and grape nuts were the first two cereals that were invented in about 1895 and through 1897. And since then, it's all been commercials and marketing and cartoon characters to try to convince people to eat more of it.
Yeah, and cornflakes are actually one of the number one foods that raise blood sugar, which can be terrible for your body. If you keep on eating or having all those cornflakes, with the corn, the sugar, the gluten, even, it can really be harmful for you. That's why
No doubt.
you shouldn't really be having cereal every single day.
Well, I would argue you shouldn't even be having cereal.
Yeah, but for people to make a jump from having cereal to every single day to zero, that's why we tell people take it step by step. So maybe now try doing cereal once a week, then just have it for like a treat, like you have for expensive restaurants. It's basically something that you should not be having all the time, and best not ever. And if you still like cereal, there are tons of alternatives made from like seeds and other kinds of like almond flour and cassava flour, which are much better substitutes for these sugar-loaded foods.
No doubt. I think we could talk a lot about sugar being bad too, couldn't we?
Yeah.
While other don't have an immediate reaction, what is the difference between an allergy and a sensitivity?
An allergy is where when you eat something, you have a really quick, rapid reaction. Like your lips might swell up, or your throat might constrict and make it hard to breathe. For some people, an allergy, their skin breaks out in rashes really fast. And it can be dangerous. It can be life-threatening. Sometimes a true allergy, somebody has to go to the hospital to have epinephrine injected into their body to save their life. And so, for example, peanut allergy or shellfish allergy. So those are, again, think of an allergy as something that can be very dangerous and very life-threatening within 30 minutes of eating it. A sensitivity is not immediately dangerous. A sensitivity creates a very low level of inflammation in the body. And so if you eat something that you're sensitive to every day, you're causing damage every day, but just a little damage. And it's always happening, and it's always happening. Well, if you cause a little damage every day, over time, your body will start to break down. And when your body starts to break down, most people think when their body breaks down, what do they think? They say, I need to go to the doctor and figure out why my body's breaking down, right? So then they go to their doctor, and then their doctor usually says, well, you have inflammation. Here's a drug to block the inflammation. But the doctor never measures to see whether they have a food sensitivity. And this is why it's important always to look at food sensitivities as a potential, because they're not acutely or immediately dangerous, but they create enough damage over time that they can lead to diseases.
So we've been saying how grain is bad for adults and everyone, but why?
So one reason is gluten. Gluten is a protein that causes inflammation. And again, it's not everybody's gluten sensitive. About 7% of people are gluten sensitive in the world. That being said, what are other aspects of grain that are bad for people? Well, number one, you mentioned sugar a minute ago, and I think that was a very astute observation on your part. You have to understand that grain is very high glycemic. So what does that mean? That means that when you eat grain, it causes blood sugar to spike. Cornflakes is an example, but wheat bran would do it too. Wheat causes the blood pressure or the blood sugar to spike. Oats can cause the blood sugar to spike. Rice is a grain and causes the blood sugar spike. So that's one reason why, is that they're very high carbohydrate foods and they'll cause blood sugar to go up. Number two, grains are oftentimes contaminated with mercury and lead and cadmium. These are toxic metals that can be poisonous to people. And we've had, just in this past year, we've had several recalls of baby food because they had high levels of cadmium, arsenic, or lead in them. And so this is a very big problem in the cereal industry. Another reason why grain-free is pesticides. Grain is one of the crops that's grown in the world that's sprayed twice with pesticides. They spray it initially, and then right before harvesting it, usually it's sprayed the second time because the chemical they're using to spray it with acts as a desiccant, so it dries the crop so that it's easier to harvest. So imagine your mom puts your plate of food on your table, right, and says it's dinner time, and she says, but wait, let me spray it with poison first. And then you're like, okay, I'm gonna you pick your fork up and you're gonna eat, and then she says, wait, I gotta spray it with poison one more time, so that's twice. How does that go over for you? Is that something? Yeah, it
Probably not good.
Doesn't make sense to me either. But that's one of the dangers of grain, is it's double sprayed with pesticide, and people don't acknowledge it. Unfortunately, so many people don't acknowledge that, and they don't even know they're poisoning themselves. And so that when they eat it, again, it drives up their blood sugar, it exposes them to toxic metals, and it exposes them to lots of pesticides. And so for those three reasons, there are more, but those are three big ones I think that will be important for your audience to understand.
You wrote the book No Grain, No Pain. So it is important for kids. So is it important for kids to avoid it also?
You mean grains? Yeah, I think so. I think especially if they're not taking care to understand where the food was grown and how it was grown and whether it was sprayed with poison or whether it wasn't. Some people who aren't gluten sensitive, they may eat organic grain, and that would be a better option. But as a general rule, should all kids avoid grain? I don't know that any scientist could say yes or no. I think in order to know the answer to that question, we would have to genetically test all the kids when they're born so that we could say which ones are gluten sensitive. If they're gluten sensitive, yes, the answer is they should avoid grain. If they're not gluten sensitive, then the answer is what you said earlier, which is maybe once a week as a treat, maybe every once in a while, maybe use other options that aren't just pure sugar.
Yeah, and so in your book, No Grain, No Pain, how do you explain this, and what do you talk about in that book as well?
Well, I talk about how to be healthy. One of the key fundamentals, in my opinion, there's 7 fundamental tenets to good health that everybody should know, including kids, especially kids. I call there's 3 rules about food, right? So food is one of the rules. You have to eat healthy food. So there's 3 rules. You can't get healthy eating food that's not healthy. That's a pretty simple rule. The second rule is, if you eat a food and it makes your body feel sick or it makes you feel bad, then stop eating it. Don't take medicine to mask the symptoms and then keep eating it. The third rule is, don't eat what you're sensitive or allergic to. Right? So this comes into, pretty simple. We can identify what is good and what is bad for us. I mean, let's ask a couple of questions for you guys. Okay, quiz time. Yeah. The Dr. Osborne quiz. Okay, is soda good for you?
No.
Okay. Lots of high sugars.
Okay, you got it. Is ice cream good for you?
Depends. There are some good ice cream. Like we have an ice cream that only has fruit and honey.
Yeah, fruit, honey, great substitutes for the sugar, all of that. Basically artificial products that they put in there to make it seem like real fruit.
So you guys answered that perfectly, right? So I know you're sharp. And so we can tell what food is healthy and what is not by what? By reading the label on the package. And if we can't understand what the word means because it's this long and it's got all these syllables and it looks like it belongs in a chemistry book, that's not food, right? So that's a rule around food. We have to eat real food to be healthy. Number two, we have to get sleep. We have to get good, deep sleep every day. So going to bed on time is very important. Number three, exercise. We got to get movement every day. It's very, very important. Your body requires exercise to function well. Number four, we've got to have fresh, clean water to drink. Our bodies are made of 70% water. So water drinking is very, very important. Number five, we got to have fresh, clean air to breathe, right? If we're breathing in chemical toxins in our air every day, our body has to filter those toxins and it can make us sick. Number six, we need to go outside. We need sunshine, right? We have to be in connection with our earth and with the earth itself. There's beneficial aspects to going outside, like making vitamin D. You need sun to make vitamin D. And then number seven, stress. So many people have so much stress in their lives and they don't control it very well, and it can make them sick as well. So those seven things are a lot of what I talk about in the book, and how to apply those things in a real world situation so that you can be the healthiest you possible.
So you were talking about pesticides. Because someone was saying that when they eat like raw vegetables and raw fruits, they get like rashes and they get an allergic reaction or sensitivity. Do you think pesticides are causing a lot of these like allergies and sensitivities?
Yeah,
Or
I do.
increasing them?
I think a lot of people don't react to some of the foods they eat. They react to some of the pesticides that the foods are sprayed with. So no doubt about that. And it's not even just pesticides. Some foods are injected with chemicals. Some foods have dyes put on them. Like if you go through a fast food restaurant and buy grapes, you would think grapes are good for you, right? Grapes are healthy. It's a fruit. It's natural. Well, what happens if they inject the grapes with purple dye so that they stay purple? Not a good thing. We don't need that dye. Yeah, right. So, that's where looking at ingredients becomes a very, very important part. But I think a lot of people, yeah, I agree. They react to food not because of the food itself, but because of what's put in the food or what's put on the food that doesn't belong in food.
That is what we do in our house. A lot of parents are scared that they might not be getting enough nutrients if a child is gluten free. What nutrients should we make sure we're getting enough of?
So I would say this to any parent who thinks that the child is going to become malnourished because they're not eating gluten. That's completely false. Okay, because there is no need to eat gluten. Humans do not have a need to eat gluten to get enough vitamins and minerals. And there's actually more vitamins and minerals in other foods than in grain. A lot of the vitamins and minerals in grain, that's one of the problems with gluten and grains, is that they have plant chemicals called oxalates and phytates, and that these chemicals prevent the minerals that's naturally in the grain from being absorbed by our bodies. So these chemical compounds found in grains can actually block the absorption of minerals, and so we end up malnourished because we eat the grain. So it's very important to understand that you can eat meat, vegetables, nuts, seeds, fruits, and vegetables. Or I already mentioned vegetables, but fruits. Those are real foods. Those are the things that you should focus on. And if you have a nice diversity of those different foods in your diet, you don't need to worry about nutritional deficiencies so much. The other thing I would say is eat things that grow during the seasons they grow. So that's what we call seasonal eating. So for example, in Texas right now, we've got cantaloupe and watermelon ripe on the vine, ready to eat. It tastes good, it's delicious, and it's very nutritionally dense because it's ripe right now. If we try to eat foods out of season, they don't have as many vitamins and minerals in them. And so I think that's another aspect to eating. So again, two things. You don't have to eat grain to get all your vitamins and minerals. And two, eat fresh vegetables, fruits, nuts, seeds, and meats, and pick your vegetables, nuts, and seeds and fruit based on the seasons that they grow in.
Let's talk about gluten-free products. What ingredients should we try to avoid in gluten-free products?
So I would say according to the food label law, any product can be labeled gluten-free if it does not contain wheat, barley, or rye, those 3 grains. But corn has gluten in it, but it can be labeled gluten-free. So if you're looking at a gluten-free food, for example, and it's got corn, like cornflakes, you can put gluten-free label on cornflakes, even though technically corn is not gluten-free. So I would say if you're looking for things to avoid in a gluten-free packaged food, no corn, no rice, no millet, no sorghum. These are all grains, okay? But also no sugars, no processed additives, no pesticides. Organic is what we want to look for. Okay, so if a food says gluten-free on the label, you're looking for whole food ingredients as the primary for making the decision about whether or not you want to eat it.
This was such an amazing discussion. What is one thing kids can start today to help overall health and healing?
I think I'll give you 2 things. Number 1 is put phones and video games down and go outside, ride a bike, jump rope, play basketball, football, whatever you like, but be outside and be active. That's 1. Very important. Number 2, eat real food. That simple. Eat real food. Read labels. Don't eat processed food. If you do those 2 things, it'll take your health light years ahead of everyone else. And if you're a kid who likes to play sports, you'll be faster than everyone else who's eating all the garbage. If you're a kid who likes to do well in school, you'll think faster and think smarter than all the other kids who are eating the garbage. And that's important, I think, to take away.
That is amazing.
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 Where can people learn more about you and your work? And please tell us about your master class.
So if anybody wants to learn more about what I do, they can visit our foundation. Is called Gluten Free Society, and that's glutenfreesociety.org. If they want to learn about my master class, which is everything you ever wanted to know about gluten, you can visit glutenology.net and register /registration. So glutenology.net /registration, and it's free. All you have to do is sign up, and we'll send you the class, and you can watch it and learn as much as you ever thought you wanted to know about gluten.
So remember, for gluten, gluten can be addictive and hard to get rid of, which is why substitutes are amazing to have. For stuff like rice, there are better versions like lentils, and if you love rice, you can even get organic rice, which is a much better option than regular rice sprayed with pesticides, and sometimes even cauliflower can do. And for stuff like cereal, as I said, cassava flour, almond flour, seeds. So there's so much substitutes for that. And for bread, same thing. There's organic bread. Basically, switch to organic. It will help your body so much. Get rid of those pesticides and eliminate any other and help your body think faster, move faster, and be healthier.
Absolutely.
That was so empowering. Everyone make sure to follow Dr. Peter on social media. And kids, make sure you get this book. Life-changing.
Let's recap Dr. Peter's key points.
We as a world have been eating way too much gluten and the wrong type for way too long, with limited diet variety, especially limited vegetables and fruits. Once they have been turned into flour, it just raises the blood sugar and insulin levels, as 2 slices of whole wheat bread raises your blood sugar more than 2 tablespoons of table sugar.
That is crazy.
1 in every 2 people have diabetes or prediabetes, and 1 in every 4 teenagers are pre-diabetic and diabetic. Dr. Peter recommends to limit and eliminate processed grains, including all forms of gluten, including barley, rice, and corn from the diet to lower inflammation, stabilize blood sugar levels, and optimize healing. About 70% of people, or 7% of people, sorry, about 7% of people react to gluten, despite being one of the basic food groups. And even more people can, but remember, gluten affects everyone. Just so make sure not to have too much. Um, so grains can be problematic. Grain is very high glycemic, so it raises your blood sugar to spike like rice, oats, and you can even find a lot of pesticides and toxic metals like mercury and lead. And you don't need gluten or grains to be healthy, and you can get all the nutrients from fruits and vegetables, proteins, nuts, and seeds. Dr. Peter's 7 key fundamentals are: number 1,
You can get healthy by eating bad. You can't get healthy by eating bad food. Read the label on the package. Eat real food to be healthy. Eat seasonally. Look for whole food ingredients.
2,
If you get a food that doesn't make you feel good, stop eating. Don't eat what you are sensitive to.
3, get good sleep. And number 4, get exercise. It's so important to move and go out into the sun.
Get fresh, clean water to drink.
And remember, breathe clean air and fresh air. Something people don't really think about, but is actually really important for your health. And
Go outside, get sunshine, connect with the earth, put phones and video games down.
And remember to try and lower stress and increase gratitude, because it can help your mental state and help healing. So thank you so much again, Dr. Peter. We are so thankful for your time and wisdom.
Thank you everyone for tuning in. Until next time, I'm Zansari.
I'm Abdullah.
And I'm Ahmad.
Follow my family and I on social media, Holistic Mom and D, and look out for my mom's book, The Holistic RX, your guide to chronic inflammation and disease, and the amazing children's book we wrote together called Adam's Healing Adventure, The Power of Rainbow Foods. Yay! Kids need to learn from other kids. Please download our podcast in iTunes and leave a review so other kids and families can benefit. We need to work together to create a healthy future for all of us and the planet. Join us next week for another episode of the Holistic Kid Show, where kids are empowering kids.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.